Finally brought out some more grass clippings for the flower beds here. Been doing some research on plants that are not just going to be eaten by deer, rabbit, whatever. I think I'm about narrowed down, get something planted. It's not a good time of year to plant stuff. I mean, it's let's see, it's late July, but we'll give it a go. See what happens. If it doesn't work, we'll just replant in the spring. I wanted to dive back into mental health. I had a couple weeks in a row there that I did talked about mental health, and then last week's video was real short. Not sure if you guys like that or not, but life just kind of happened, and so I put out what I had. So we had some fun hauling the walls and rafters over and getting them stacked up. Hopefully here in a few days we're gonna go tackle that floor and really see what we've got for skids under there, the runners, the long 4x6 runners. See what we can salvage from those. Hopefully most of them, but we'll see. And then after that, we'll start stacking up blocks and getting everything level and building, which I'm really looking forward to. As you can imagine, if you've been following me now, we've been quite a few weeks here of trying to take apart an old shed and then salvage that to build my first cabin out here. But I digress. Let's get back to mental health. I'm going to beat this drum a lot on this channel, not only because of the struggles that I've had, but also because of some of the things that I've learned that have really helped me, and because I think it's tremendously important. I'm not going to get into why I think it's so important on this video today. I will at some point in the future, but I want to kind of give some nuts and bolts of things that I've found that have really helped. And it can be boiled down to one thing, so I'm going to start with that. A number of years ago, a secular psychologist named Richard Schwartz came up with a theory called internal family systems. So, and I'm probably going to butcher some of these details. The details really aren't that important. But he was he worked in family systems, family dynamics, and what we can do to help those people. And working with that, he came up with a theory of an internal family system. So it's a family system, but it all exists, between these two ears. And he talks about how we have different parts. Some people call it parts theory as well. And the ways that have made the most sense in my mind to explain it, kind of the easiest way is if you've ever found yourself, say, excited about an upcoming event, but you're also a little nervous about it. So part of you is excited and part of you is nervous. Another common analogy that people use is the movie, or I guess movies now, Inside Out, which I've never seen. I kind of get the gist of them, that within this young girl are these different kind of characters, and sometimes when one of the characters tries to take over all the controls, like anger tries to gets a hold of the controls inside her brain, then that's when she kind of acts out in anger, jealousy, etc. And so this theory that we all have these internal parts, and these parts have each of these parts have their own well, even almost their whole own personality. They have things that make them feel better. They have things that make them feel worse. And there's three types of parts. There's exiles. So those are the parts that in our system have caused so much trouble that we've exiled them. We've pushed them away. And then we have our manager parts. These are the parts that most often, I'm going to use the analogy of driving the bus. So those managers, for most of us, those are the bus drivers. Those are the ones that we allow to take control. Those are also the ones that, because they're in control so often, can be some of the main issues. And then there's the firefighter parts. Now these parts come in whenever the manager or manager parts are not able to keep the system running and running well, and the exiles kind of start trying to pop back in. These firefighters take over, and these are parts that can cause kind of more extreme action in us. Kind of mentally checking out, or even becoming verbally abusive, or even physically abusive. And so all these parts have their place within our system. A key point to the theory is that none of the parts are bad, because all of these parts are doing what they can and using the tools that they have to create a smooth running system. So outside of all these parts then is the self. Now the self, in our analogy, is the one that should be driving the bus. And as long as all the parts are seated in the bus where they're supposed to be, doing what they're supposed to be doing, and self is in control, then that's kind of the ideal. It's not kind of the ideal, it is the ideal. That's what we're shooting for. We're shooting to try and be in self more and more as we do more work. So as I learned about this, okay, let me back up. I learned about this through a Catholic lens. There are two resources that I'll talk about here in a few minutes that I've been a part of or are currently a part of. But basically what some people have done is taken a Catholic worldview and a Catholic anthropology, which is just a big word for the study of humans, like what humans should be, which is why I want to jump in with this here, because I've talked a couple times about, what is a human? What does it mean for me to be human? Before I can understand what it means for me to be Matt, husband, father, son, brother, etc., I wanted to look at what it meant just to be human. And so within our systems, depending on how well we're staying in self, kind of determines how much peace we have, how more easily our prayer life happens, how our relationships are better and stronger. Excuse me. And it's when these parts, any of them, try to take over control and drive the bus that, I'll just use a relationship example. A lot of times that's when fights happen, arguments happen, disagreements. And especially if both people in the relationship have a part that's taken over, it can get pretty ugly. And if you've ever been in a relationship, you probably have experienced that. So I learned about these things through two resources. And one I've already talked about some, and that is what's called the Resilient Catholic Community. Now this was founded by a guy by the name of Dr. Peter Milanowski. And this is it's initially a one-year program. And what it is a group of men or women, if you're a woman, virtually, it's all through Zoom. They learn about this internal family systems, this parts theory, and then they do some like guided exercises at times to kind of understand our parts better, and what's their motivation, kind of what activates or what triggers them, what makes them want to take over control of the bus. So the Resilient Catholic Community, I was involved with that for a full year. I've since stepped away just because it's a little bit more of a group setting, and I felt like I really needed some individual work. So the benefit of the Resilient Catholic Community, it's a for me it was a lower barrier or lower cost of entry, right? It's not me going once a week and sitting down with a counselor or a therapist to work on some stuff. Um, in my mind, it was kind of less stigmatized. I have done individual therapy before with secular people, um, and it had its benefits, but it also had its limitations. So, yeah, in this group, it's a group of like 8 to 10 people. You meet once a week. You have a smaller group within that group, one or maybe two other people that you do daily check-ins with, which is usually just like a quick text. You know, hey, stayed pretty. The language in RCC, Resilient Catholic Community, is blended and unblended. So if I've blended, that means my parts are blending and trying to blend with self, and that's not good. When I'm unblended, when self is driving the bus, the parts are in their seats doing what they're supposed to do, then I'm unblended. So just a quick daily text. I absolutely love the program. I learned a ton in there. As I've said before, probably the biggest thing is being able to, when I go before God in prayer, to envision myself as that beloved little child of God. So if you're a person that's thinking, things just aren't quite right inside, I don't have any huge major problems, but I'm having trouble dealing with stress, or I'm having trouble with a relationship or whatever, it's very affordable. And again, it's an easy thing to do. I guess I don't know how to explain that very well. But for me, it was just a lot easier than calling up some therapist and making an appointment and doing that kind of stuff. And you're going through it with other people. In that year, I bonded highly, heavily, deeply with that group of men, and we still stay in touch. It's been months since I've been out of that program, and I just got a text from one of the guys the other day. Um, Shout out, you know who you are, love you, man. Uh, so it's a great experience. So if you're a person that either something's not quite sitting right, or honestly, what I found in my life is to kind of take that next step in my faith and my prayer life. Um, I would highly, highly recommend looking into Resilient Catholic Communities. Guy's name is Peter Milanowski. I'm not real good at remembering, but I will try to remember to tag him and tag that in the description box. The second place is through a place called Catholic Psych. Now, the guy that founded this, his name is Dr. Greg Bottaro. Jump back. Dr. Peter Milanowski has the Interior Integration for Catholic podcast. That's where my wife found him and then passed him on to me. Dr. Greg Bottaro with Catholic Psych also has a podcast called the Being Human podcast. Highly recommend both of them. But what Catholic Psych is doing is they are training what they're calling mentors to work with people. There's a reason they're calling them mentors and not counselors or therapists. I don't feel like I can explain it well enough, but there's a very good reason. But what it is it's daily contact between a mentor and a mentee. So I have a mentor right now. That's the individual work that I'm doing. It's kind of a mashup of a spiritual director and a counselor and a few other things. But really what it is it's just somebody that's seeing you on an individual level. And again, this is all virtual. They actually use a voicemail app. So every day I am able to leave up to a 15-minute message for my mentor, and then he responds with up to a 15-minute message. Again, that experience has been absolutely amazing. I've been blessed with, I can't imagine a better mentor that I would have got matched up with. Just a truly amazing man who doesn't shy away from anything I tell him. When I'm struggling, whatever it is in relationship, or I'm just struggling within my own self, I can just lay things out for him, and he doesn't bat an eye. I can say some pretty shocking things, and he's just right there along with me. He's staying with me, staying in front of me, and just accompanying, which is their kind of big focus tag word, whatever you want to say. So Resilient Catholic Communities, or Catholic Psych Mentorship. Highly recommend both. Doing both at the same time, do one then the other, whatever kind of fits your situation. The biggest help that both of these programs have given me is the more I understand my parts and their motivation, what they are seeking, the easier I can help that part stay in their bus seat, and they're able to feel like things are okay. It's not an emergency, so myself can work with each of those parts so that the part doesn't get to that driver's seat. We're able to maintain a steady path, all the while getting those parts what they need. But the biggest thing in understanding each one of my parts is helping me understand when I sin, what's going on. Coming from a Protestant background, I really, whenever I would sin, I would just beat myself up, have a lot of negative self-talk, like I've talked about in a couple other videos. And I just kind of try and white knuckle it and kind of just beat myself beat my will into submission to not sin. That didn't work very well, as you could probably imagine. Then as I came into the Catholic world and now, okay, now I don't, it's not all on me, right? I can go to confession and I can confess these sins and I can have a priest, I can have Jesus forgive those sins through a priest. And like most good priests, they offer some advice, offer some, here's some, trying to think of examples that they've given me, when you're feeling this way, maybe try this activity. Or when you're feeling this way, go to a certain saint, etc. So that helped me more in that I wasn't just having to beat my own will into submission, but now I had somebody else to kind of try and understand those sins and to try to prevent them. But I didn't fully understand my motivation to any particular sin until I understood my parts. Because it was my parts that so let's say one of my exiles just feels awful, okay, feels terrible, feels, whether it's something that has happened or something that exile is perceived to happen, and that exile just can't take it anymore. That exile wants to act out. And for me, a lot of times that acting out was sin. The same with my manager parts. Okay, I have an anxious manager. Okay, that manager wants to be fully in control of everything going on around us. And when it feels like it can't, then it acts out. And then my firefighter. Again, the firefighter, for me at least, is the one that's responsible for the most, the mortal sins, to be honest with you. The bad ones, anytime that I fall in any of those ways, that it's usually one of my firefighters. And so, because I could understand those parts, and because I could understand their motivation when that part would have the desire to sin, now I can do two things. One, because I understand the motivation, I can work with that part to become reintegrated or unblended or sitting in the seat of the bus where it's supposed to be, so that we can maintain a smooth ride and we can avoid that sin. Also, because I understand the part and the part's motivation, I can understand why, just like I think everybody else, most of the time when I sin, it's one of, maybe two sins that I just keep doing over and over and over. But because I understand my part and I understand its motivations, I can understand why it continues to seek that sin to alleviate any discomfort or pain or what have you. And the more I can understand all of these, the better of a confession that I can make, and the more I can understand my motivation for seeking those sins. And it's not just because I'm an evil person or I'm just so deep of a sinner, so terrible of a sinner that I just can't avoid it. It makes sense in my head why I can continue to go back and back to the same sins. And the more I understand all of that, and the more in touch I am with my parts and understanding and communicating with them, the temperature, the internal temperature inside my head just lowers, and I'm able to take things as they come more easily. That anxious manager isn't lashing out in anger when the wheels are falling off with whatever situation I'm in. The more I understand my exiles and they're crying out for help or attention, the more I can understand what they're saying and why they're saying it, the more I can sit with that part in self. I can sit with that part, and I can get that part to a point where it's not in crisis mode anymore. So it's not wanting to lash out in sin. Now, does this mean I don't sin anymore? No, no. Not on this earth. It's just not going to happen. There's not anybody that's going to be able to manage their system in such a way that they can avoid sin. There's only Jesus and Mary that I'm aware of. Pretty sure everybody else still continues to sin throughout their life. But the more integrated my internal family system is, I cannot express to you guys how my prayer life has improved over any other thing I've ever done to try and improve my prayer life. I'm able to have very honest conversations with God about what's going on, how I'm feeling, why I'm reacting in a certain way. And I'm not just praying because I know that's what a good Christian should do, or I'm not praying to kind of sound holy. I'm just having a conversation, and the more unblended, the more the self is in control, the better those conversations, the better those prayers are. So I cannot encourage you highly enough. If something's really, really wrong in your life, like I talked about my friend a couple weeks ago, then you need to go get professional help. But I don't think most of us are that way. We're struggling through life the best way we know how, but there's just times where the stress or the anxiety or whatever it is, it just pops up, and it's there because we're humans and we're dealing with other human beings and we're dealing with things on this earth that aren't perfect. So if you find yourself saying, well, I'm not really that bad, I don't struggle with, severe anxiety or panic attacks or anything like that, so I probably don't need to do anything like the RCC or Catholic Psych Mentorship. I'd like to challenge you on that. These are two very, very good programs. It's not therapy like you think about. It's just going through life with other people that you can be honest with and that you can share your struggles with, and they can share their struggles with you. And there's a little bit of education along the way to kind of just help you understand what's going on in your own brain. So there's my plug. Probably long-winded. I apologize for that, but I am going to tag both of those down below. I'm just really passionate about both of these things, both of these programs, because they've done so much in my life and in my relationships with my wife, with my kids, with my extended family. And then, you get to a point where the more you understand your internal system and those different parts, and you can now understand parts and see parts within those you're in relationship with. And so if just out of the blue, my kid is in just a horrible mood, I can recognize, okay, well, one of their parts has taken over. And what do I think that part needs to hear, or what action do I need to take to soothe that part so that my kid can, become unblended again. In all types of relationships, it's just made a huge difference. So that's what I have for today. Came out, mowed, did a little weed eating, did a little sweating, as you can see. It is July, so I guess that's fair. Refilled the flower beds, hoping to get some flowers in there soon. God bless you guys. See you next time.